Hi, I'm Kate Vanskike, and I'm here to say no on inclusion writers in the film industry, and here's why. An inclusion writer, also called an equity writer, is a provision in an actor's or filmmaker's contract that requires a certain level of diversity in casting and production staff. For example, the writer might include a certain proportion of actors be women, people of color, LGBTQ individuals, or people with disabilities. Prominent actors or filmmakers use their negotiating power to insist on such provisions. While the popularity of the inclusion writer has grown in recent years, particularly with female actors using them to ensure greater exposure for women on the set and behind the scenes, the inconsistency in use and the lack of industry-wide standards defeats the purpose. I spoke with Kurt Nolen, a Steadicam operator who worked in Hollywood for 15 years before breaking from the film industry. He says, "We all want the workplace to be more diverse, and that's the goal we should work toward. But while the concept is right, the inclusion writer itself is not the answer." Why? Because, Nolen says, they work sometimes for some people. That's not inclusive. Nolen explains several complicating factors to prove his point. First, the stars have the horsepower to help force varying degrees of inclusion, but it's commonly used only in above-the-line workers, the talent, producers, and directors. Below-the-line workers, those who are oftentimes doing the riskier work behind the cameras, are considered more expendable in the budget line, and they don't benefit. The element of inclusion is now dictated by the talent, so that's the group that will benefit, says Nolen. 2. For any kind of writer, inclusion or otherwise, to work, the film industry would have to impose regulations. Nolen says inclusion writers would be the solution to the prejudices if the film industry was set to self-regulate, but it's not. In fact, he says, it's terrified of regulation. To prove his point on regulation, Nolen shares that film sets don't even follow OSHA-type safety regulations required of every other industry. Contract services in the film industry produces its own policies and procedures around hiring and safety and other issues. 3. Without regulation and consistent standards, inclusion writers currently put what he calls the most clueless members of the team in control, rather than the producers who know what it takes to toe the line in aspects of sets, cameras, and total operations. It's the actors who are calling the shots, making the demands that can put people in jeopardy. Here's an example. There are only a handful of certified Steadicam operators with a high level of experience wearing 150 pounds of gear that allows them to swing out over precipices to get the perfect action shot. If an actor's inclusion writer demands that the camera crew be all women, for example, and there isn't a trained female Steadicam operator available, that can put someone's life in danger. 4. There's no standard process or form for writing an inclusion writer. Every agent can do them differently, pursuant to the talent demands. And 5. The film industry operates in its own specific set of social norms that exist only in Hollywood or New York or Atlanta. In short, their idea of equity and inclusion is quite limited. And here's a final example. Nolen once worked with a non-binary trans person who was having a difficult time getting signed in the film industry. Once they realized they had to choose a specific gender identity, female specifically, they finally got in. So, in a nutshell, as Nolen says, inclusion writers are nothing more than smoke and mirrors.